Welcome back, everybody. Judging by the stakes that you see behind me, I know you guys are getting excited already. Yes, it's time for another test. What are we testing this time, you ask? We are going to test weed control products and starter fertilizer with weed prevention in it. What works, what doesn't, what claims to work, and what works better than others. We're going to do 4 tests this time. We're going to keep it pretty simple. So for all 4 tests, we're going to be using my Kentucky Bluegrass only seed, which, of course, it's the only thing I have in stock. I don't use any mixes. First pass, or first test, is only going to be Kentucky Bluegrass seed. No starter fertilizer, no weed control, no nothing. Second test, we're going to test starter fertilizer versus no starter fertilizer. Scott's, of course, again. Now for the third test, I haven't recommended this product for too many people yet, just because of the fact that I don't like to recommend product that I personally don't have confidence or experience in, so we're gonna test it here. So this is Scott's, the starter fertilizer with weed prevention, weed control in it. So pre-emergent. Basically, this is what you're supposed to use if you are seeding in the spring, which I usually don't recommend doing. I recommend fall seeding, but that's another topic on its own. So we're gonna test this, see how well it works. Then we're gonna test the Scott's Weed and Feed as I fall over backwards. We're gonna test the Scott's Weed and Feed, the normal stuff that I put down and a lot of you are putting down every year for weed pre-emergence. All right, so we're gonna test this. According to this, it should not let any grass grow. It stops weeds, stops grass, basically stops everything. All right, here you can see the 4 strips that I'm gonna be testing in. Strip 1, test 1, strip 2, strip 3, strip 4. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is lay down grass seed, and I'm gonna lay this down uniform all the way throughout, as much as I feel is needed. Now, many of you haven't seen or maybe don't remember this part of my backyard yet because of the fact that, little funny story, this used to be grass, and then because of the leaves matted up all around this, because it's in a corner and the wind blew and blew, I mean, we're talking leaves like, 5-6 inches everywhere in this whole square. So what I decided to do was, instead of fighting with that and maintaining all those leaves consistently and always staying on top of it, what I did was I just ripped this all out, and then we ended up doing like vegetables and strawberries and stuff over here. So we haven't done that for 2 or 3 years now. And now, funny story, look at this. So I ripped out the grass, put in a vegetable garden, and now we're putting grass in again. So pretty funny. And then in probably 2 or 3 months from now, my in-laws will be here again, and this will all be ripped out from grass and going back to vegetables. So interesting. And let me show you a video of what this looks like most of the year, because again, I don't maintain it. We don't do anything with it for most of the year. So when we're not planting vegetables, which we pretty much only did 1 year when my in-laws were here, it's pretty much just straight weeds. And I'll show you a little video right now. And you guys know I love to do extreme case examples to test products. Just like Milorganite, testing it every single week to make sure nothing's wrong with it, testing grass seed, testing everything I could possibly test. And sure, I could do this test in my backyard, just like I've done many other tests. The problem with that is there's already established grass there. So yes, it's nice if we're talking like overseeding in spring, but what if we're talking about fixing bare patches? That's really what I want to focus on for this video, is bare patches like this. Can you seed in the spring successfully, and how good will it look? So that's pretty much what we're trying to get at here. So instead of the weeds competing with the established grass, which is already a hard competition, because as you guys know, I'm pretty much at the point where I can go without weed and feed or any weed pre-emergents for the year because the grass is finally that thick. It's not quite there, but it's like right on the border. So once in a while I do some test areas to see, hey, can I get away without weed prevention? So, but what we're gonna do here is the extreme case example, and hopefully you guys like this. And check out this video right now. I'm gonna show you of what it looks like. I mean, we're talking weeds, you know, 6 feet tall. So pretty nasty, looks like a jungle. And everybody else loves seeing other people's disaster areas and weeds, as long as it's not in your own yard, right?
This is called letting it go. Weeds have taken over. Time to rip them all out. Now a lot of you are probably wondering why I let this go for so long. And the reason I do this is to show you all different types of weeds and what they look like fully grown. See all the different types we have? Here's an interesting one in the bag already. I mean, look at how long this is. It's the tallest one out here. So here's one variety, another variety. All these are one variety. And again, I have some lower ones there. Some with some pretty purple flowers. Isn't this beautiful? So this is exactly why I do it. And another different species right there of weed. Now, I don't think too many of you out there are actually thinking that this is actually why I do it. Yes, I'm lying to you, just to prove you can't listen to everything on YouTube. Come on, you guys are smarter than that. You guys never miss a thing. This is because I'm lazy. I'm not gonna do this many different times of the year. I do this basically once, maybe twice a year. And the reason I basically let this go and don't really care about getting all the way down to the roots is because of the fact that I'm gonna concrete or paver over this in the near future. So that's the real reason. So now isn't this interesting? You see the leaves over here on this weed right here? These are normal, but look at these. These are curled upside down. Is that strange or what? First time I've ever seen something like that, and that's the only one in this whole jungle of weeds that actually shows upside down. And yet it looks like the same species as all these other ones. So the question is, why am I showing this to you guys? Why am I showing you this weed patch that I got here? That's because I want to be always honest with you guys about everything I got going in my lawn. Projects that I'm doing, here goes a couple hours doing this, and even more importantly, because of the fact that I think everybody loves seeing other people's weeds in problem areas. Makes them feel like, hey, at least mine's not as bad as that, right? Some jobs are funner than others, and some are much, much worse.
All right, welcome back. Hopefully that video made you smile a little bit. Pretty disastrous, isn't it? So, first thing, I already put down some seed all around and did a light raking, so it's under there. It's good enough. And most importantly, it's uniform. So now, in the first section, we're gonna have just grass seed. No fertilizer of any means in there. Second section, that's where we're gonna put the starter fertilizer. This way we can do a good test to see if, hey, does it grow any quicker or not than without the starter fertilizer, or are you just wasting your money? And with all these products, the starter fertilizer, the weed prevention, or the weed and feed, and the other starter fertilizer with weed and feed, all of these have basically the same spreader setting. So it's between 3.5 to 4. So, I'm sorry, 3.5 to 4.5. So I'm basically gonna do a handheld version of a 4. So you can argue that this isn't the best, but you know, it is what it is. If you can think of a better idea of how to do it in these little strips, please comment below. But this should be a good test. Now we're gonna rip open this bag. And lastly, we are gonna use the weed and feed. Hopefully show any grass or weeds. Okay, there you have it, everybody. We have our 4 tests done. Now basically I'm just going to water regularly as I usually do with grass seed, and we'll give you a weekly update and see what's growing or what's not growing, what's growing faster. So this should really tell us about if we need special product to grow seed in the springtime. Now I hope you guys realize how important this test actually is. The results of this could make us double our seeding. Most of us are seeding only in the fall. However, if this test proves that we can grow grass even remotely well, maybe not to the extreme, how great it is in the fall time, but if we can grow it remotely well in the springtime, I know there's going to be a lot more people doing seeding, maybe even doing aeration twice a year instead of once a year. And this could make our grass that much thicker, but time will tell. And then the best thing about that, if our grass is that much thicker, our neighbors will be that much more jealous, right? Stay tuned for the next update.
All right, here's the week 1 update, and I'll make this really quick because it's raining on me at the moment. So here we are, and shouldn't be too big of a surprise that after week 1 there is no grass in any of the test spots. Stay tuned for week 2. All right, here is the week 3 update, and I know the last couple weeks haven't had much growth or activity of any kind, but now we finally have some activity report. So just to give you guys a little bit more background, this is middle of April now, and weather is finally getting warm enough, and it's not frosting overnight anymore. So this would be the best time to show you and do this test. Keep in mind, this is a very hard test to prove because of the fact that for perfect timing to grow grass from seed, we basically want the ground to be above, we'll say 55 degrees. Somewhere between 55 and 65 is usually the best time to grow seed. Unfortunately, weeds will germinate before that. Soil temperatures are right around 40 degrees. Weeds are already germinating. So that's why you put down your pre-emergents. So this test is pretty difficult just because of the fact of you have to time both things just perfectly. So 3 weeks and we haven't seen any signs of grass growth during this test. So other than these 4 tests, this is proving actually one other thing, and that is, can seeds remain, we'll say, dormant, or do they die off, we'll say, and become useless? So what I'm seeing here in test number 1, you can see all these little spouts coming up. So they're coming up a little bit, not too much. There are some weeds. You can see a lot of the weeds coming up here. There's a lot of spotty weeds, not too big yet. And second test, which has the starter fertilizer along with the grass seed. Now this has a lot more growth in every way. So in my opinion, what this is doing is it's making the weeds grow much quicker. You could see all these, we're looking at, half a dozen weeds easily right here, and they're pretty tall already. Here's a ground angle, so pretty tall already. But you can also see a whole bunch of more blades of grass. See how tall those are? So these are coming in pretty good, much better than the side without the starter fertilizer. So far the starter fertilizer is working very well, which is supposed to. unfortunate side effect is it making the weeds also grow quicker. Now let's move on to the third test here. So this strip right here is your third test, all in here. And if you guys are noticing what I am, this is where we put down the blue bag of Scott's starter fertilizer with the weed prevention in there. It's supposed to stop weeds. Looking at this, I really don't see too much of a benefit. I mean, I see a little bit. I mean, I probably see three to five right here. Not as tall of weeds and as established as these over here without the weed prevention in there, but you can see for yourself. But on the good side, there's also a lot of blades of grass coming up, so you can see all of it, you know, pretty regularly, evenly all the way through. So unfortunately, the weed prevention may be doing a little bit, but it's not doing that much. And this is basically my philosophy, what I've always been telling you guys, that when you buy a standalone product, meaning just weed prevention or just crabgrass pre-emergent, you know, instead of with the fertilizers, it's usually going to do a better job. And this is pretty much point in case right here. Or do they say case in point? I forget which way the expression goes. Then the last step here, or the last test number 4, was the weed and feed that I use from Scott's in the yellow bag that I use every year. Now, as you can see, there is no blades of grass coming up yet. So it is literally stopping every blade of grass from germinating. And also, you can see, maybe surprising, maybe not surprising, is that this is all completely weed free. So that is doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm very happy that this is working out in this fashion, just because that's one of my favorite products to use and I've always had good results. And it's clearly not just my own experience, it's, here's your proof right here. There's a difference of test. And I know you guys are probably looking at this and like, yeah, I thought you were gonna clean out these leaves in the past. And I clean this out every freaking week, but it's just ridiculous. This is where the leaves pile up. This is why I ripped out this whole section before, because the leaves all pile up in this area every week and it just piles and piles and piles. And it's so impossible to grow grass there just because of that and keep it established. And because it's a hotter section than normal because of where it's located next to the house and the bricks. So I just kind of tore this out and we did a vegetable garden in the past, you know, several years ago. I guess it was like 2 or 3 years ago. And then it's, for the last couple of years, it's just been weeds, as I showed you earlier in this video. But this is the perfect test ground for the, you guys know I love the extreme cases for weed prevention and to test weed prevention and the grass seeds. And one other thing I do want to mention real quick is that, again, this video is not about growing grass seed and how long it takes to do that, or what the right application rate is for putting down grass seed. We already covered that. Link below in the description for my grass seed test, where I proved 6 different test theories out, proving how much grass seed to put down. Does it matter if you do light-handed or heavy-handed, or what brand you use, or if you use a mix versus just Kentucky bluegrass or such and such. So you can see the video below about that, but this completely is separate than that. This is not about how long it takes to grow grass seed. It does not take these 3 weeks just to get these little bitty results, okay? Keep in mind, I'm doing it early in the year, earlier than most people would ever seed, just because a fact, of course. If you're watering every day for 3 weeks and you see basically next to nothing right now, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, you're wasting everything. So reason being, again, is because I'm trying to time the grass seed growth with the weed prevention of stopping everything from growing, or just the weeds from stopping and growing. So that's what I wanted to focus on here. It's a very specific test related to seed growth with weed prevention. So that's what we're trying to test. Basically, we're trying to test if it's possible to seed in the spring and get good results without having too much weeds. And finally getting some more results here. So in the spot where I did just seed and no weed control, you're starting to see a lot more everything. You're starting to see blades of grass come up and also little bits of weeds, but no tall weeds really, except for those two guys, which are kind of on the border between these two tests. So I'm going to assume a little bit flaked over into that one. So there's your grass seed alone. Nothing special. Then when we look at our second test here, it's a lot of weeds, and this is the one with just starter fertilizer. So as you can see, the blades of grass are pretty tall already. They don't look like it because of these huge, looks like thistle coming up. So, but you can see them pretty sporadically. Obviously it has to fight for water with the thistle and all these other weeds. But you can see the blades of grass are much taller than in the first example. Then in the third test here, here's the overview for you. Right in here. Not as many weeds, but pretty close. It's not that much better, to be honest, which is supposed to have weed block in it. So, pretty good grass growth, though, I might say. And there's your angle, so you can see all those blades of grass coming up. And then, in the fourth test, the weed and feed bag, that's supposed to stop all growth, and it's doing a pretty good job still, this many weeks later. So, you can see this one weed in the middle there, and you can see a few on the edge here, which I'm assuming that was just a bad job by me. These ones are in the middle between this stake, so it's on the border. And that one's on the border too, so I would say that that's on the edges. It's not giving a good example, but basically this is stopping pretty much all growth as it's supposed to. I do see a few specks of grass coming up, and there's a little patch over here, one circular patch. I don't know if it's coming in from that side. It kind of looks like it is, but either way it's still allowing some into there, but very little overall. All right, here's the week 6 update of seeding in the spring with weed and feed products and pre-emergents. As you could tell, lots of different results here. So let's take a look. Here is the seeding that I did with no startup. So here's test number 1, seeding results in the springtime with no weed and feed products, no pre-emergents, no starter fertilizer. And you can see I have grass pretty much all throughout. You know, it's still pretty thin, and there's also a bunch of weeds. I would say probably about 50-50. It may not show too great on the video, but it's about 50-50 realistically. Pretty consistent all the way through also. And here is test number 2, starter fertilizer with no weed pre-emergent done. And you can barely even see these flags in the corner anymore, but this is your test right here. And it's pretty much a lot of weeds. So the starter fertilizer, clearly it works. Starter fertilizer, there's no question about that here. And it makes everything grow. So it's making the weeds grow quicker, and it's also making the grass also grow quicker. So you can see much higher grass there than anywhere in our first test without the starter fertilizer. So you can see that nice little patch of grass right there.
and pretty much all the way throughout. It's all higher than our first test without the starter fertilizer. So that is doing what it's doing. But keep in mind, the starter fertilizer, like I said, makes everything grow quicker, the grass and also the weeds. So you still have that competition to deal with. And then Scott's came out with this product, this blue product, which is basically your spring pre-emergent for weeds, and also the starter fertilizer that everybody loves to put down and is very nice. So it seems to work, but not as well for the weeds. So the starter fertilizer works just as good, I would say. We have pretty tall grass all the way throughout here. You know, it's not coming in thick yet. That's still a problem. But you can tell really, really tall weeds. I mean, if that one right there was standing up, that would probably be one of the tallest ones among this whole bunch. So keep in mind, this test, which is a starter fertilizer with the weed control or pre-emergent in there, does do a better job. When you look at the less weeds in here versus here, you know, it is doing its job, but I wouldn't call it a full pre-emergent by any means. This is way too many for me, unacceptable in my opinion, but to each their own. Then we come to the last test, which is the weed and feed area. This is the stuff that I use on my lawn pretty regularly. And you can see it's pretty much stopping all growth. There is a little bit right here. Let me show you from down here. Not sure if you can see right around there. There's a little section of grass coming up, but not much. So, and you can see a few weeds starting to come up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very, very little though. And you can see one like right there. But overall, this is your test right here. This is everything we expected it to be. Some surprises, but overall, this is definitely the product I'm recommending and I've always used and stand behind. So the reason I'm ending this video here and not waiting for the grass to completely get thick and lush and compete with the weeds here is because of the fact that this is 6 weeks already. Keep in mind, this blue product here only lasts for 6 weeks. It's only a 6-week pre-emergent versus the weed and feed on the corner is technically roughly good for 8 weeks. That's why I always recommend the standalone products. Even though this weed and feed is technically, you could argue it's not standalone because it has the weed pre-emergent and it also has the fertilizer in there, but it doesn't have as much because you can tell the starter fertilizer, look how much is coming up from a weed perspective. That is a big difference. So you can tell that less weeds are coming in there because it's got more weed control in it. So you can tell in here in the blue bag that they changed up the mix or the rate or the whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's the ingredients they put in there, but they clearly let some stuff go in this one just in order to boost the nitrogen levels for the starter fertilizer and help everything grow quicker. So that's your test. I didn't want to prolong this video more than 6 weeks because otherwise you wouldn't have a good test between these two. Clear that this should tell you almost everything you want to know about seeding in the spring. Sure, there's hundreds of other products I could have demonstrated. Maybe that'll be in part 2. If you guys have any other products that you want me to test, do a test on, no problem. Put something in the comments below and I'll check it out. I'm always up for doing new tests, new experiments. I love learning from myself and also for teaching you guys. We all learn together, right? And I do want to reiterate this one more time because this is very important. Is it possible to seed in the spring? That's our first test, if it's possible. Keep in mind, this first test has no pre-emergent down. But the timing of your spring application, meaning for seeding, has to be exactly perfect, we'll say, because spring is a very short window between if you're putting pre-emergence down, obviously you would get no growth in this last section. But in this first section, clearly it's not great results either. And that's because, keep in mind, a very important thing about this video, I timed this
at the early spring because I had to do it at the same time I'm putting down pre-emergents. So this is not a complete test of if it's possible or not. Sure, it's possible. Anything's really possible. But realistically, it's very difficult because of the fact that in this test, I wanted to time my pre-emergence for the weeds. It has to be early. That's early spring, no question about it. That has to be done very early. Then, at the same time, I'm putting down seed. And as you saw in the first 3 or 4 weeks, no grass was growing. That is not normal. But I explained that over and over, and hopefully you guys understand that, and don't say, hey, this video is a fail because you failed to grow grass. That's not what we're testing here. I did grass growing, my grass seed test. You guys saw that last year when I did 6 different seed tests, which one's better and all that. So again, link below. I hope you guys check that out because that was a good video. But this is not about is it possible to grow grass seed, or if maybe I know how to grow grass seed, or if I'm just stupid and don't know what I'm doing. This video is exactly about the timing for spring, if it's possible, and how hard it actually would be in order to do it and to grow grass properly in the spring, with or without doing pre-emergence. So because of the timing of my pre-emergent, it would have to be early spring. I had to seed early spring, and you don't want to seed early spring. Usually around 40 degrees or so. I mean, you got to have your pre-emergence down for your weeds. Otherwise, your weeds can be germinating and you're going to miss them as they're coming up. So, and the problem with that is seed I had to put down. The seed obviously took a little longer for it to grow, but once the seed started growing, you know, it's growing pretty decent now for this last week or 2. So it is possible, but keep in mind that seed's still going to stay dormant. So if you wanted to lay that seed down, it's still going to stay down there. It eventually will come up. I mean, this is 6 weeks old seed, and it's finally coming up now because we're finally at the right temperatures, but now, unfortunately, you have to compete with all these weeds. So just want to keep in mind that that's why the seed took so long, and that's why this is not a perfect grass seeding growth example, nor does it have anything to do with grass seed timing and how long it takes to grow. I did that video, like I said before, last year. So this is all about seeding in the spring with pre-emergence and without. All right? So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave me something in the comments below. Love these videos for you guys. And like I've said before, these are my favorite type of videos to do for you guys, these tests, because we all learn together. If there's something that you have a question about, please let me know in the comments below. I want to do more and more tests for you guys. Let's all learn something together. I'm working on 1, 2, 3 other tests for you guys right now. This was the 4th, so I'm pretty overwhelmed, and you can tell by my voice. I'm still sick, getting over a cold for pretty much 2 weeks. Maybe I lost my voice. Maybe it's not just the cold. So I'm doing all I can for you guys. Hopefully you guys are enjoying these and subscribing for more. All right, thanks.